Hello and welcome back to the DIVEBOMB Power Rankings podcast with myself, Dan Jones, joined yet again by Ollie Radley and Owen Bradley.
Hello everyone.
Hi, how's it going, guys?
We're here to recap the month of June and another absolute action-packed month. We've had two F1 rounds, we've had the 24-hour World of Le Mans, we've had IndyCar, we've had Formula E, we've had 3 Moto Gp races, we've had a lot. Of course, we have a top 10 to discuss later as well as previewing the next month.
So, looking at Formula One in June, we started off with Baku, and it was, to say the least, an interesting result for Ferrari because there was a double DNF for Ferrari with Sainz and Leclerc, and even Guan Yu Zhou and Kevin Magnussen had failures, just going to show that Ferrari engine, yeah, it really is not looking good for them, and their season just gets worse and worse by every race.
Whilst Ferrari's season got worse and worse, Verstappen's season is getting better and better. Another dominant victory this season, and it makes up for the heartbreak he received on the streets of Baku 1 year earlier when he crashed out after a dominant performance. He was joined on the podium by Sergio Perez as Red Bull racked up yet another 1-2 this season, their third of the year, and George Russell also got another podium, his third of the year, by finishing P3. Now, as Mercedes teammate Lewis Hamilton had a bit of an interesting weekend. The porpoising issues on the Mercedes seemed to cause him back pain. He seemed in significant pain towards the end of the race. And the porpoising was as bad as we've ever seen it from Mercedes. They've had the worst problems out of any team. But in Baku, this was really bad for them. So in the weeks between Baku and the Canadian Grand Prix, the FIA said they'd intervene with the porpoising situation. So do you think this intervention was right, or do you think this intervention was wrong?
The porpoising, obviously, when the regs first happened and when we went to testing, porpoising was affecting every team. Since then, obviously, we've had a lot of time and most teams have ironed it out, and it's not really a problem for many teams. Mercedes, however, are still have big issues with it. And obviously, we saw in Baku, the car bouncing so extremely down the straight, similarly in Canada. And so, with the FIA stepping in, they're only really helping Mercedes. But with the intervention, the changes the FIA will make will impact on Mercedes' performance. So Mercedes, the ball is now in their court. Do they want to sacrifice potential performance to maybe reduce the effect of porpoising, or do they just want to carry on and reduce the risk of losing any performance with this intervention?
Do you want performance, or do you want driver comfort and driver safety to some extent? It's an interesting debate. We've seen Red Bull, they've pretty much fixed their porpoising issues, potentially why their performance is so strong this year. But the FIA intervention may disadvantage Mercedes, but Mercedes could just hire their ride height to solve these problems. But yeah, it's a big debate. Do you want performance, or do you want safety? And that's the discussion that has got to be made with Mercedes and the FIA.
We also got a bit of F2 action in Baku, not in Canada, but some in Baku. Obviously, F2 and Baku have gone there every year since the inaugural event in 2016. This year, however, Frederick Vesty came out of the shadows and took his first win in the season. He's struggled massively since coming to F2. You could say he's been suffering from second driver syndrome at ART, but he took the win from P2 in the sprint race, his first win in the season, and he's kind of taken this momentum now. It's hopefully going to start to see his results improving compared to the lowly finishes he's been seeing so far this season. In the feature race, it was another case of Yuri Vips crashing from the lead. We've seen him obviously recently crashing out of the Red Bull Academy. I think the less said about that, the better. But he crashed from the lead in the castle section at Baku. Dennis Hauger came out and took the feature race win from Vips.
1 week later, we headed over the pond and we headed back to North America for the second time this season for the Canadian Grand Prix. And qualifying was quite the scene, definitely the best qualifying we've had this entire season. We had a wet quali, which was drying towards the end. It was Max Verstappen, who took only his second pole of the year, both in wet conditions, by over half a second. But the surprise was the man sitting in second place on the grid. Fernando Alonso returned to the front row after over 10 years away from it. It was a delight to see the Alpine back. You may have been wondering where Verstappen's rivals were. Sainz lined up third place behind Alonso after he made a slight mistake on his lap. Leclerc took an engine penalty after his Baku problem, so he started P19 as Yuki Tsunoda also had an engine issue. And Sergio Perez, well, he had a crash in Q2 and did not advance, so his championship hopes, which were discussed after the Baku Monaco, were in serious issues at the start of the Canadian Grand Prix.
In the race, it was just a textbook Max Verstappen victory. He dominated in quali, showed no signs of losing it to absolutely anyone, took pole by 6 tenths, led most of the race, obviously lost a few positions when pitting, but they were all regained once everyone else would pit. It was just dominance from the Dutchman. Had a bit of a threat from Sainz at the end, but you always just thought, oh, Max has got this. He's just so composed behind the wheel of the Red Bull, and he never showed signs of losing his win in Canada.
Well, as you've both touched on in both qualifying and the race, Max's rivals were pretty much nowhere to be seen because Sergio Perez was out of the Grand Prix with a gearbox failure, and Charles Leclerc obviously had to take an engine penalty for what happened in Baku, and he started last, which, you know, he had an excellent recovery to 5th, but looking at the championship, it really is not looking good for Leclerc, is it, guys?
No, it's really the situation he did not want to be in. As the season's gone on and on, they've posed less and less of a threat to Red Bull. And can I see Ferrari matching Verstappen now? I don't, personally. I think Ferrari have great one-lap pace, but as soon as it comes to race pace, Red Bull just are unstoppable. Verstappen is a force which cannot be beaten, whatever Ferrari are doing. His constant reliability issues, which Red Bull had at the start of the year, are just plaguing Ferrari race after race. And they're just dropping points after points. And what is it, 49, 50 points now behind Verstappen? That's 2 race wins they have to catch up. They are so far behind. I think it's going to be a very difficult task now for Ferrari to catch Verstappen in the championship.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the last few races, it's been somewhere close to a 95-point swing in the favour of Max Verstappen, which is just ridiculous when you look at it that way. Ferrari picked up the championship in the beginning, and it's slipped out of their fingers now.
Listen, I don't think it is all over Ferrari just yet. The season, it's a very, very long season. Who has the edge? It will ebb and flow throughout. Last season, obviously, Max went on a similar run like this in that France-Austria period, won about 4 races in a row or something like that. Absolutely stormed into the lead of the championship, and it all went away with just one collision at Britain. It all went away. The tide swung back in Mercedes' favour. I could see something similar happen this season. Not necessarily from a collision, but I feel like it will change again. Ferrari might regain the edge over Red Bull, and I still think it'll be a close championship.
Reliability has been a massive, massive factor for both teams. The cars seem much more unreliable than they were last year. And we saw Red Bull's particular issues at the start. And we thought reliability would be Red Bull's main downfall. But as the season's played out, we've seen it's been Ferrari's main downfall. I think reliability will be so crucial because the point swings are so big if you're rival DNFs and you don't. Leclerc dropped 25 points in Spain, dropped 25 points in Baku, and because he had to start the back in Canada, that's another, 10, 15 points dropped. So, yeah, reliability is so important, and those are the crucial swings that can be made in the championship.
I suppose the other thing to consider is that whilst last year there was a lot of point swings back and forth between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, it was also Lewis Hamilton, who is a 7-time world champion. Ferrari, they've got 2 very young drivers, and neither one of them are experienced in the championship battle. So it could be a mixture for Ferrari this year of bad reliability from the team and also a bit of inexperience from the drivers.
We mentioned this last month, didn't we? We said Verstappen's championship experience might be vital for this year, and particularly in the last month, I think we've really, really seen it. He's just taking it race by race, and it's really helped me pick up points. He's not making the same mistakes, and whilst we saw this in Max Verstappen's career for years and years, I just don't see him making a mistake anymore. He's just such a complete driver. You wouldn't expect him to have a moment, but you kind of still expect that from Charles Leclerc, if you get what I mean. Verstappen's consistency is just flawless, and that's going to be so crucial into winning a potential second world title.
Yeah, I agree. The Max Verstappen's run of form this year has been so reminiscent of like Sebastian Vettel back in his Red Bull days, where he got that first championship off his back and then he just seemed so relaxed and he was able to get so many good results. That could be a similar thing for Max Verstappen. Is he got that world championship, now he's just driving as he should be. He doesn't appear desperate in his attempts to overtake or defend. He just seems like a very complete driver now.
I mean, he's got 6 wins out of the 9 races we've had so far this year. And I was thinking about this the other day. He could genuinely challenge Vettel's win record. So what does he need? 7 wins out of 13 to equal. And the form he's on, I wouldn't even put that beyond him. He could challenge Vettel's records this year. And we've seen him. Was he like 8th in the all-time win list now? He's still 24. He's such a dominant force in F1 already. And who knows what the record books will look like when he puts an end to his career.
As Dan mentioned in the intro, we had the prestigious 24 hours of Le Mans. It was, of course, surrounded with lots of excitement. It always is. It's an incredible event that they put on every year. And we will now go through class by class, giving you the details of what happened in the race. So then, let's get straight into it with the Hypercar class. As it always is in Championship and Hypercar specifically, it was a Toyota battle. The 2 Toyotas were the only really contenders for the race win, and it was a battle between them throughout. The number 8 seemed to have the edge throughout, but there was an issue for the number 7, which cemented the number 8's place as the winners. They took the win of the 24 Hours Le Mans. As for their competition, the Glickenhaus and the Alpine, nowhere to be seen. The car in third, the 709 Glickenhaus, 5 laps off of the race win. And the Alpine had an issue, 18 laps off the win, finished halfway through the LMP2 field. Talking of LMP2, it was not as crazy as LMP2 normally is. The Jota 38 car won the race having led every lap bar 11. That means they led 358 out of 369 laps raced. The previous year winner, the United Autosports 22 car, got completely wiped out straight away through the Dunlop curbs. They were 4 wide in the LMP2 lead, and collision was bound to happen. And off went the United 22 into the gravel trap and out of the race. Well, not out of the race, out of contention, sorry. They did recover to 10th, but they will be disappointed of what could have been with their race. GT Pro now, and it was a tragic race for Corvette. They were leading 1 and 2. It was going so well. They seemed like they had it in the bag, and then a suspension issue for the 63 car left the 64 out on its own in the lead, while Porsche and Ferrari scrapped for second. Then, out of nowhere with 8 to go, the Corvette 64 seemed like it had everything under control. It was bound to win, and it was wiped out by an LMP2 AM car. An amateur driver makes it even worse, just didn't see the GT, banged wheels of him, and off went the 64 car out of the race, and Corvette left Le Mans empty-handed. The Porsche 91 car, the unsuspecting Porsche team, claimed the win, having barely led any of it, because obviously Corvette had been dominating the race, but they will not complain whatsoever. Finally, GT AM class, TF Sport 1 for Aston Martin.
Time to go across the pond and back to IndyCar, where there were 2 races this month, kicking off with the Detroit Grand Prix, the last time on the Belle Isle circuit before they moved to downtown Detroit for the 2023 season. So it was kind of a battle who would get the last win on the iconic Belle Isle circuit. Newgarden, he got the pole on the Saturday, but the Sunday was a very, very different picture. An absolute strategy madness of a race. The red tyres are terrible. Everyone wanted to go on the blacks, but of course you have to use the reds. So everyone's trying to get off these reds as quickly as possible. Such as Alexander Rossi, who spent about 5 laps on the reds and he was like, I'm going blacks for the rest of the race. And he was right in contention ever since he made that strategy change. but it would be Will Power who went onto the Reds mid-race who would win, and Rossi was closing him down at an absolute rate of knots. And with one more lap, I reckon Rossi would have won the race, but it was Power who held on by about a second. And Newgarden, who was on pole, he ended up fourth. He took the conventional strategy, should we say, unlike Power and Newgarden. He ended up fourth with a Pato Award. He finished down a fifth. Third place went to Scott Dixon. We then headed over to Road America, and Alexander Rossi got his first pole position in over 3 years. How about that? One of IndyCar's most dominant people. First pole in that long, and it means IndyCar had 8 different pole setters in 8 different races. How about that? Let's see if we can keep that streak going into Mid-Ohio. Bit of drama early on. Alex Palou crashed with Chip Ganassi teammate Marcus Ericsson. Palou was quite angry in his interviews, although it probably was a bit of a racing incident. Neither of them mean to crash each other out. And Pato Award, he had his own engine issues, which plummeted him down the order. So both championship contenders, Award and Palou, hitting their own troubles in Road America, which obviously isn't ideal for them. But the eventual victor was Joseph Newgarden, an absolute dominant performance, a textbook performance at Road America. And it means he won $1 million as he's won on a road course, obviously Road America. He won on a street course in Long Beach, and he won on an oval in Texas, meaning he won the challenge, claiming a $1 million prize. How about that? Marcus Ericsson ended up P2, and Alexander Rossi, he finished in P3.
Just the one event in Formula E in June. Obviously, the championship is really heating up now. We've got 7 races to go, and the season ends in just a month and a half. We'll get onto it later, but July is going to be a busy month for all motorsport and Formula E especially. In Jakarta, the inaugural Jakarta event, I have to say, I'm a very big fan of the track and the event as a whole. Really good circuit and a really good event in general. Not a fan, however, of the 9 a.m. get-up to watch the race. In qualifying, it was a Techeetah 1-2, and off the line, they maintained that 1-2, but Jaguar's Mitch Evans was waiting in the wings behind. He remained in third, close up to the 2. DaCosta, who's in second, made a mistake. Evans capitalised, swung through turn 1 and took P2 off the Portuguese Techeetah man. Then, later on, Evans caught up to race leader Jean-Eric Vergne and overtook him as well, more conventionally this time, not relying on a mistake from the Techeetah. He seemed to pull away for a bit, but then towards the end of the race, the tide changed. Vergne had the pace. He closed right up to the back of Evans. Evans defended for his life. Mortara, who had made his way up to third, caught right up to the back of him as well. He looked like he could challenge for the race win at that point. Mitch Evans defended a stalwart defence from the Kiwi, and he took the win. And Vergne at the end was holding on for dear life against Mortara behind. That was the Formula E, a thrilling race in Jakarta. Very excited to see more from them in the next few years. WRC, 2 events. Rally Sardinia, Oyt Tanak took his first win of the season. Led around 70% of the weekend. He led something like 15 out of 21 stages. Very impressive stuff from the Estonian, but nothing we haven't seen from him before. Championship leader Kalle Rovanperä, 5th in Rally Sardinia. Not exactly where he's been recently. He was first for 3 races in a row before that. But Safari Rally Kenya, it looked like it was going to go wrong again. A mistake on the singular Thursday session, saw the Finnish rally driver 11th, 11 seconds off of Ogier in first. Obviously, that's nothing that you can't turn around. Loeb and Ogier both showed up for the historic Rally Kenya, a test of man and machine, and both of them failed. Neither of them finished the rally. It was a Kalle Rovanperä win by nearly a minute. He turned it around and now leads the championship by over 60 points. He might just be the next Loeb or the next Ogier. We'll have to see in the next few years.
Going on to 2 wheels now with Moto Gp. Moto Gp got June underway with the Spanish Grand Prix in Catalonia, with another Fabio Quartararo win, who won at his home track. He's dragged that absolute dog of a Yamaha up to a win again, which is just incredible. Bagnaia and Nakagami had a first corner, first lap crash, and to be brutally honest, it could be Pecco Bagnaia's championship hopes just fading away now, which is very devastating because he was so good in 2021 and he's looked very strong at times in 22, but it's just not his year at all, and Fabio is just winning so many of these races that Pecco should be. Pol Espargaro, unfortunately, celebrated one lap before the end of the race, which was quite amusing, but also very devastating because it meant that he lost his podium record, and I don't think the Aprilia guys were that happy about it. We moved over to the German Grand Prix in Sachsenring, and we got news that, unfortunately, the king of the Sachsenring, Marc Marquez, who has historically won 11 wins in 12 years, he wasn't going to be at the event because of his injury, which was, again, very sad to watch because he's been injured since 2020 and he's taking so long to recover. And Pecco Bagnaia in the race actually bottled it once again, crashing out of the race, and that left Fabio Quartararo on to win it as well, which meant that yet another race for the Yamaha was a win, and it carries his domination forward again. Then we moved over to the Netherlands with Assen. Fabio Quartararo actually had a poor race, crashing twice, and even crashed into one of his championship rivals, Aleix Espargaro. Bagnaia capitalised on this for potentially one of the first times of the season and actually won the race, which is Ducati's first win at the Assen GP since 2008, where Casey Stoner did it. Marco Bezzecchi scored Team VR46's first podium in Moto GP with a second place. And overall, Assen does seem to be like a great track for VR46 in general. It's one of Rossi himself. It's one of his strongest tracks, and it looks like his team are very strong there as well.
Right, it's time for the main event, the power rankings for June. And I've got to say, this is probably our most hotly debated month. There's a lot of worthy contenders and a very worthy list for June. So we're going to crack on with number 10. For a series we have not mentioned, Paul Aron in the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. We saw Dino Beganovic on here last month, and now his championship rival Paul Aron has made it on to the list of P10 this month. He got 3 out of 4 wins in Paul Ricard, followed by Zandvoort, and he got P3 in the other event, the Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine. It's probably one of the most competitive junior series out there. There's loads of talent, stacked with people from driver academies, and Paul Aron, who races for Mercedes, had a really disappointing start to the season, but he's really resurrected his championship hopes by 3 out of 4 wins, and obviously the P3 in the other event, which was a very, very solid showing from him.
From one Mercedes junior to another, although this one, it was a very heated debate, let's say, but he just got the edge over his Estonian academy teammate. It's Kimi Antonelli of Italian and ADACF4. In the 9 races he competed in the 3 rounds across the 2 championships, 7 out of 9 wins. And in those 2 races that he didn't win, he was only second. So a near perfect month, for the Italian boys. We've got Paul Aron, Mercedes Junior. We've got Kimi Antonelli, Mercedes Junior. We'll either race for Mercedes or we'll either make it to F1 one day.
Well, Antonelli was really hyped in his karting days, and coming into the season, he had such high expectations of him, even for however old he's, 15. But his expectations were through the roof, and he has delivered beyond his expectations. He's winning near enough at every race he competes in. We saw brilliance in UAE F4 at the start of the year, and he's carried that on into Italian ADAC F4. Obviously, he's not leading the Italian Championship because he had a bit of a messy first round, so it's obviously behind Camera in a championship. But in both the championships, he's been so dominant. And we know how good Mercedes are bringing their talents to F1. They've had Wehrlein, Ocon, and Russell all in their books. Russell obviously races for Mercedes. Ocon has been successful in F1 so far, and although Wehrlein probably didn't have the career that he wanted, he still went to F1 and he still had a successful career in Formula E. So with the talent that Antonelli clearly has, I can definitely see him F1. It's probably, 5, 6, 7 years down the line. Aaron, on the other hand, I'm not as confident, but he's showing what he can do in Frecken, and let's say he'll have a Prema F3C next year, he could show what he does there. And you never know, Mercedes are so good at bringing their talent to F1. We could probably see both of them. I think Antonelli's more likely, but who knows?
For me, you call me boring, but I think it's too early to call whether Antonelli will make it to F1. For me, Paul Aaron, I don't know. I don't see it happening. But Antonelli is probably the more probable of the two, but I still think it's too early to call with him. We saw Ollie Behrman go through similar stuff last year. He won both championships in the end, and in Italian F4, he won 8 races in a row and was disqualified from a 9th, which was out of his hands, obviously. And he was signed by Ferrari, skipped right up to F3, skipped Formula Regional, got right into a Prema seat in F3, and we haven't seen him doing as well. He's obviously still got time, but he's not been setting the world alight in F3. So Antonelli, even if he does win both championships, Mercedes need to be cautious. They need to take their time. They don't want to rush him. He's still got loads of time. He's still very young. And they've been cautious in the past. They don't rush their drivers through the junior formula. And I think if they do that with Antonelli, there's a good chance he'll make it. But I think it's too early to say. Number 8 on our list. He always finds a way onto the list. It's Kalle Rovanperä. After Rally Sardinia, we were looking at putting Tanak on, but his performance at Kenya was astonishing. Kalle Rovanperä, just 21 years old, and he's taken 4 rally wins this season. Took 3 on the trot before Sardinia. He's been absolutely incredible. And obviously, Rally Monaco, you had Loban Ogier, and it was a battle between them. Rovanperä was third. He couldn't really threaten them at Monaco. They were in a league of their own, you could say. But despite being half their age, having 3 or 4 years of experience compared to their 20 years of experience, he's been incredible, and he's beat them on 2 or 3 occasions now. So you can't even throw the excuse that Loban Ogier aren't doing full seasons, because he is beating them even when they are there. So Kalle Rovanperä at 8 on our list. Number 7, similar to Rovanperä, it's Mitch Evans. He does find a way onto the list, and he has in June. There was only one race that we had to pick from with Formula E, and Mitch, it was just an incredible drive. It was the Mitch Evans show in Jakarta, to work his way to the lead, taking his time, managing his energy, which has been a bit of an issue for him in Jaguar this season. He took his time, he got to the front, and he defended incredibly from Werner Mortara, 2 very experienced drivers. And, the championship in Formula E, it is really heating up now.
P6 is a man who's had a bit of resurgence in June. Of course, Alexander Rossi, he had a really good Indy 500. It's kind of a race he always seems to do well. He obviously won that on his debut way back in 2016. But June is what we're focusing on, and that was still an excellent month. A 2nd place in Detroit after his bold strategy after switching off the Reds very early, followed by a pole and then a P3 in Road America. As we mentioned, his first pole in 3 years, which I just find crazy considering how good he has been in previous years in IndyCar. But a 2nd and 3rd this month is really good for a man who's just not quite had it since 2020. And that struggles he's had of Andretti Autosport has led to a change. He's going to Aaron McLaren SP for 2023 alongside Pato O'Ward and potentially Felix Rosenqvist, although that was a bit of a strange one because McLaren announced Rosenqvist would be racing for them but didn't announce the series. So it could be IndyCar or it could be Formula E. Anyway, that's a problem later down the line. But yeah, so we'll see Rossi in McLaren next year, moving away from Andretti Autosport, and he'll be replaced by Carl Kirkwood, who currently races for AJ Foyt. But do we think McLaren is the right move for Alexander Rossi? A bold one to say that.
It's fair to say McLaren are really going places in motorsport. Obviously, they're an established F1 team. They've been winning for decades. They're a worldwide name, and now they are really expanding worldwide. They've previously just remained rooted to F1, but they've expanded now to IndyCar, Formula E, and Extreme E, and they're going about it the right way. They're buying into teams with experience, teams with good personnel, and then they're bringing their branding, their attraction to it. And now you're seeing them bringing in the top quality drivers. Pato O'Ward obviously has been with McLaren since the start of their journey in IndyCar, and Alex Rossi, an established winner in IndyCar, won the Indy 500 at the first time of asking, as everyone remembers. And he has struggled in the past couple of years, but at McLaren, I'm sure he'll find his feet once more. They're going places big, and I'm very excited to see how McLaren do in their expansion over the next 5-10 years.
Rossi's move really is bold, but you kind of see he wants to be part of this growing project. And we've seen Pato O'Ward was in championship contention last year, and this year he's probably not had he's had an okay start, but he probably could be doing better. But the potential is there. We've seen Felix Rosenqvist, he's had a much better year. McLaren are getting stronger and stronger, and they're starting to solve the issues that they had last year. And I think Rossi is kind of seeing this project and the potential that McLaren have to challenge the established Ganassis, Andretti's, Penske's, and we're seeing them expand to a 3-car operation next year, which is really, really exciting. And I think McLaren will be a force to be reckoned with in IndyCar, and McLaren are getting more and more involved as an entity. I think they're setting up something in Woking, but yeah, it's really exciting. I think it's going to be a good move for Rossi, especially the pressure's kind of gone off his shoulders now. I think Andretti's you're expected to perform, but in McLaren, it's not quite like that. So I'm definitely excited to see what he can do. Let's stay with IndyCar for P5 on our list. Joseph Newgarden, P4 and a P1 in June. He got the Detroit pole, the last one on the Bel Air circuit. Might be remembered for that. He only finished P4 in the race because he took what we call the normal strategy, and that still wasn't the best one. How about that? But still, a P4, solid weekend, loads of points gained, particularly on championship rivals. And then Road America, he didn't get pole, but he dominated the race to gain his third win of the season and claim $1 million, as we said earlier, for his street, road, and oval victories. And it's bumped him up to P3 in the standings. He's only 5 points off Will Power. He's still 32 off Marcus Ericsson, but still a long way to go. And we've seen Newgarden has already got 2 titles under his belt. He's got this experience. He's got the ability. I reckon we're going to see him towards the higher end of the championship like we have done for so many years now. June, he's had a good month, a 4th and a 1st, to gain a deserved P5 on our rankings.
Now, let me tell you this, ladies and gentlemen. The next 4 have been so hotly debated amongst us because they have had such a good month, every single one of them. So number 4 is Fabio Quartararo of Moto GP. He's had 2 wins this month, but the only thing that was holding him back from putting him up higher on our list is that he absolutely bottled Assen and he crashed out twice. And it was a terrible race for him, but we cannot ignore the fact that he absolutely dominated the 2 races that he did win. He's the championship leader on a Yamaha, which, if you've watched the other videos, you will understand that that bike is not the best by any stretch of the imagination. And with this championship lead, I think this does pose a question. Do we think that Marc Marquez is out of this sport and that the new legend and the new up-and-coming rising star is Fabio Quartararo?
Well, Quartararo, he's kind of reminiscent of Marquez. Maybe not to the same extent, but he came in with a bang. He performed well in 2019, obviously had to wait to get his first win in 2020, but he got plenty of podiums, and we've seen, obviously, in 2021, at the age of, 22, 23, he already gained his first title, and in a bike which is not performing up to his expected standards, he's still leading the championship by some margin. And maybe he won't be as dominant as Marquez will be or have the hype around him, but he's still a fantastic rider in his own right. And Marquez, he's had his problems for near enough 3 years now. It's really setting the scene in some ways. But Quartararo is kind of filling the boots that Marquez placed in MotoGP, and he's doing that to some extent. He still has moments of madness. We've seen this in Assen, which which may hamper him in some ways, but he's slowly becoming a dominant force in Moto GP.
Yeah, I mean, he's the reigning world champion, but I actually don't think he will be like the next Marquez, because Marquez has just had a freakily incredible career, whereas Quartararo, every time I think about that question, I think back to 2020, where Marc Marquez was injured throughout the whole season. It was his championship. It was Quartararo's championship to lose, really, and he actually lost it to Joan Mir on a Suzuki, which, if anyone's seen Joan Mir since, he's never been up to championship standards. So is Fabio Quartararo the next Marc Marquez? Potentially, but I think he'll go down as just a very, very good rider who could win a couple of championships.
Onto the podium then, and we've got our first ever entry on the list. Not a driver, we've got a entry. So, at third, it's the 38 Jota entry from LMP2 in the World Endurance Championship. We talked about them earlier in the Le Mans rundown. It was just incredible from them. Unheard of dominance, insane dominance in the 24 hours of Le Mans. To lead like they did, incredible, honestly. Just to say, those drivers in that entry are Roberto Gonzalez, Will Stevens and Antonio Felix da Costa. So all three of them are packed into one slot on our list at third. At number 2, it's another entry. It's the number 8 Toyota from the Hypercar class of the World Endurance Championship. Again, talked about them earlier. They won the race. They just had to be on the list and they had to be high up. Winning Le Mans, it's no mean feat. And whatever fashion you win it in, it's impressive. To build a car that lasts 24 hours of non-stop racing at the speeds they go, it's incredible. The drivers in that entry, you've got Sebastian Buemi, Brendan Hartley, and first-time winner and new driver to the Toyota program in the World Endurance Championship, Ryo Hirakawa. As I said, they led most of the race, and their competition, other than their external competition outside of Toyota, was nowhere to be seen. Glickenhaus were 5 and 10 laps off. Alpine were 18 laps off. Obviously, that doesn't reflect their pace, but it showed that they had issues and they were not able to compete against Toyota. As we look forward to next season then, boys, Toyota will have a lot more competition than they've been used to. Will they remain on top, or will they lose out to the large amounts of manufacturers coming into Hypercar next season?
Next year, I believe we're having Peugeot, Ferrari, Porsche, Lamborghini, BMW, and I think a couple others coming in next season. I think Alpine are dropping out, but they'll be back in 2024 in the Hypercar class. But I'm looking forward to seeing some competition. For the last 5 years, it's kind of been a formality that Toyota would win, and it's not really what you want to see. Glickenhaus are never going to be able to compete with the mighty Toyotas. But I'm looking forward. It's going to make Le Mans a much more competitive and much more interesting event. And we don't know what the cars are like. We don't know what the competition is going to be like. So it's probably too early to say whether they'll remain on top. But the more competition, I think, will be absolutely brilliant for Le Mans. I think Ferrari's got the most hype around them. Their project is really, really eagerly anticipated. And I think it'll be very, very, very exciting to see all these different manufacturers at Le Mans and make it the iconic race. We want to see it. It doesn't feel quite the same to me when you have a guaranteed victory for a Toyota. And having two Toyotas race against each other for the win of one of the most iconic races in motorsport doesn't feel right. And seeing all these manufacturers come in next year, I think would be really brilliant to see.
Yeah, I agree. It's like if you look at all the other Triple Crown races, such as the Indy 500, you've got so many drivers and teams that have got an opportunity to win that. You've got Monaco, where there's so many, maybe not so many, but there's 2 or 3 teams, and that means 4 to 6 drivers that can win that race. And Le Mans has always sort of been a Toyota domination. So to get this Triple Crown race finally competitive once again, it's going to be really entertaining over the next few years, and I can't wait to see what is going to happen. At number 1 is a man who is probably used to finishing number one. It is the reigning champion, Max Verstappen. And the reason we decided to put him at number one is because he's just had two very dominant performances, really. He capitalised on the Ferrari's mistake and misfortune in Baku. And, of course, he had a pretty perfect weekend in Canada with a domination in qualifying and, of course, won the race with a little bit of pressure from Carlos Sainz, but he didn't succumb to the pressure. He just soaked it up like a sponge, and he was absolutely fine. So the question I want to ask, guys, is this year Max Verstappen's work and his talent, or is it just the fact that the Ferraris have been dropping off?
I think Verstappen has been a better driver this year. I think his results kind of show that, but he is aided by these constant Ferrari issues, which is so painful to see in some ways, because it is kind of robbing us of a championship fight in some respects. Obviously, we see Ferrari, they've got reliability issues. We saw that in Spain. We saw their strategy issues in Monaco. We saw their reliability in Baku, which affected them in Canada. Been a terrible run of races. I think Verstappen capitalising on all these Ferrari issues just shows how good he is in some ways. He keeps on picking up the points when Leclerc's got his issues. And these are such important points in this championship battle. And they're the points he needs to win this championship, and he's just racking them up. It's going to be so important. I think his talent is just good enough, because we even seen in the races, even in Baku, he was already cruising towards victory. Let's be honest here. I don't think Leclerc would have posed a threat. Obviously, Spain, Leclerc was miles up the road, so that was just unfortunate for him. But his form, you can't deny his form. Obviously, Ferrari have got their issues, but his form and his ability are picking up on these Ferrari mistakes, which is so important. It's so important in this championship fight.
Obviously, talent is a big factor in championship fights like these, but I do think the car and the edge that teams have over each other is just as vital. Last season, Max and Lewis were evenly matched throughout, and who had the championship lead often depended on which team had the marginally better car. And I think that'll be the case again this year. It's been a lot more extreme than last year. The points gaps and the points have been very extreme. But I just think Max's ability right now is being highlighted by Red Bull's edge. I think if at the start of the season Max was performing at the same level, I'd say, but because Ferrari had an edge in the first couple of rounds, I think it looked like he wasn't as good as he is now, but I think he's just maintained the level of skill while Red Bull have improved their performance.
I think it's been a common case this season where Ferrari's one lap pace is significantly better. The only poles we've seen Verstappen get are Imola and Canada, which are both wet sessions. So Ferrari's one lap pace, I think, is clearly superior, but we've seen this. Their race pace seems just to be so much more superior. We saw this in Saudi Arabia. We saw this in Baku, for example. It's just Ferrari that you can't rely on them in some ways. You can't rely on them to constantly challenge the Red Bulls, because they just make so many stupid errors. A lot of them, the strategy, the drivers make mistakes sometimes. It's just a constant whirlwind. It's quite annoying. But Verstappen, we're seeing this again. I think he's really picked up from last year. He's picked up the criticisms, and he's obviously the controversy surrounding Abu Dhabi. I think he just silence people, and he's showing that through his performances. No one can fault his performances at the moment, because he's not making any mistakes. The only time he's finished off the podium when he's finished a race was Monaco, and he got hampered in qualifying. He couldn't really do much from that point onwards. So I think Verstappen is driving at the best he has in Formula 1 so far, and obviously he's aided by the Ferrari issues, but I don't think that takes away from how well he's doing.
Yeah, it's a question that we always get with legends of the sport, I would say, is when Lewis Hamilton was winning his championships, it was a lot of people complaining that there was no one to challenge him and all this sort of stuff. But you can't deny the fact that even though Ferrari have had their failures, Verstappen has beat his teammate. He's beat other drivers that aren't having these failures. So he's just having potentially could even be his sort of era. You know, we had a Hamilton domination era, we've had a Schumacher era, we've had a Vettel era. Maybe this is the start of Verstappen's.
Well, as we said earlier, I think Verstappen will threaten the record book towards the end of his career. He's on 26 wins, I think, now. And he could easily go, top 5 or 6 on the wins list by the end of the season when he'll turn 25 this year. And it's just crazy. He's just so dominant at such a young age. It's truly remarkable to see. The one fear I have is that he might fade out like Vettel did because Vettel dominated at such a young age and obviously fell off later in his career. But it's a long way down the road. He's locked into Red Bull for 2028, and if Red Bull keep on producing these top quality cars for him, I just don't see him being unable to perform. His ability is so good, and if Red Bull could just provide the cars to match this ability, it's just going to be such a dominant force for years to come.
So, as we look ahead to the month of July, F1 has got a busy month with 4 F1 races in Britain, Austria, France, and Hungary. And that is just before we head off into the summer break, which, an entire month of racing. That's going to be very entertaining. I cannot wait for that. And just a friendly reminder that the British Grand Prix, for UK viewers at least, is free to watch on Channel 4. And not free, but it is also available on Sky Sports F1. And of course, we also have some of the F2 and F3 races at those events as well.
F1's only got a measly 4 races compared to IndyCar's 5 in July. We kick off the month with a race in Mid-Ohio before a return to Toronto. First race away from America since we went to Toronto in 2019. It'll be delightful for us to cross the border yet again. There's more rumours of international races in Argentina and Mexico, but that's a different topic for a different day. And then we have another return, this time to the Iowa Speedway for a double header. And then we end off the month with yet another race at the Indy Road Course, the autumn one, like we traditionally have.
July really is the month of motorsport. 5 Formula E races, 5 of the remaining 7 races in July. That's spread across the month as well. Marrakesh, the first of them on Saturday, as a replacement for the Vancouver race that went down, crashed and burned. It was a massive mistake in general, really. Poor planning led to the event getting cancelled. A New York doubleheader on the 16th and 17th, and then a London doubleheader on the 30th and 31st. And that will set up the Seoul finale in South Korea in the middle of August. But that's for another time. Then, also, the 6 hours in Monza, we got another World Endurance Championship race in another month, and it's the debut of Peugeot. Personally, I would like nothing more than for them to get a 1-2. I think it would be just a great story to see Peugeot do well on their debut.
That's about all we've got time for. We hope you enjoyed the video, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the DIVEBOMB YouTube, as well as follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Project DIVEBOMB. We'll see you in July.